game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros, the anti-hot take sports show. I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Be sure to follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Josh G. Buck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports. The website is clockersports.com, and the email address is contact@clockersports.com. We are in a dead period of sports right now. The NFL season is over. The NBA just wrapped up the All-Star break, and that means that we are making our transition from leading with football talk to leading with NBA talk. And what better way to do that than dominating the show with NBA talk? And I have a very special guest with me today to help me do that. Talking about the Atlanta Hawks is none other than Kevin Chouinard. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Kevin, if you don't know, is a writer for NBA.com. He is also the host of the ATL and 29 podcast, and he's also the social media coordinator for the Hawks on Bally set up there. So Kevin is a very busy man, and if you know anything about this industry, that is a necessity nowadays. So hats off to you, sir, for staying active in an ever-changing environment.
Thank you.
So let's get right to it. First and foremost, we got to talk about what were your thoughts on the All-Star game? Like I said, we just wrapped up the break. We had the big hubbub about the non-competitiveness, 211 points. The losing score this year would have won last year's game. What are your thoughts on that?
It can't be that hard. Like there's got to be something. They just made an in-season tournament out of nothing, and it was plenty competitive. So there's got to be a way to make it competitive. There's got to be some stakes. The home court for the finals or something like that, that's way too dramatic. It's not that hard. Just a little bit of money. One thing I saw put out there was that the schedules for the players are way too busy. They've got just 4 days of nonstop stuff. Like cut the schedules, find players who want to be there, find players who are healthy. I like Trae's suggestion. I think he was talking with Rachel Nichols and she asked him about that, and he said that Donovan Mitchell told him that they should be like a Rucker Park style MC, just ragging on people who don't, if it's not going well, you're going to hear about it. Like that kind of motivation. That's sure. Put that in there too.
Yeah, I would definitely think they need to get some more input from the players because whatever they're trying just has not worked. You heard LeBron James and Anthony Davis flat out say injuries are kind of at the forefront of players' minds rather than trying to be competitive in this game. Anthony Edwards said the same thing. I was wondering if maybe shorter season overall would help that, just kind of take some of that stress away from them. But that's another conversation for another day because it was just not a very competitive game. Like I said, I think it's kind of the par for the course. The scoring went up with the league scoring. It's always higher scoring in the All-Star game. Whatever. I do want to ask you, though, about your thoughts on the Hawks pre-deadline, pre-trade deadline, pre-All-Star break. What is your take on this team that came into the season with a lot of hope and a lot of aspirations?
I mean, it does seem like they're going in the right direction. I guess if you look at the 8 games before the break as a totality, they had the 4-game winning streak. They played well against the Clippers and Boston in losses, and those might be the 2 best teams in the league. And then they had losses to Chicago and Charlotte that were kind of dismal. And Charlotte, I would tend to throw that one out too. Like anytime you play on the road right before the All-Star break, people are just like already on vacation and gone. But that Bulls game at home, I don't know, it was just such a listless game. Like that felt bad, like a bad outcome. It felt like there were some obvious things that were missing. I'm forgetting what they were now because it's been a little bit, but that game struck me as, oh, that's really not good.
Yeah, those battles they've been tightly contested in the past few years. So to see the way that it played out this past time, I definitely was with you on that. Just it didn't seem like the typical Hawks effort. Maybe they were on vacation a little early. I know that I often watch the team play, and even when they're at full strength, they're a smaller team. So the Bulls. One thing the Bulls do have is 2 big guys, and so maybe that was kind of playing a part in that loss. But they've had too many of those games where they seem like they're not sleepwalking. They're looking like they're paying attention, but it's just they don't have the energy to kind of keep up. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was missing from those last 2 games against Chicago and Charlotte, it's like you are desperate for perimeter defense. You've got this rookie here who's kind of done everything that you've asked for him at whatever levels. And when he did play very recently, he showed some promise as a perimeter defender. Even if it's just for the energy jolt, if you really need perimeter defense quite that badly, uh, I would have gone to him. And one of the reasons you need perimeter defense so badly is that, if Capella's hurt and Okongwu's hurt and you've got no center, then perimeter defense becomes more at a premium. And, watching guys like Bogey over those last couple of games, he's played valiantly all season, but, he just looked like he didn't have any legs on the defensive end whatsoever. I thought that, shortening minutes somewhere and getting Kobe in would have been a good idea.
Yeah, Bogey is a defensive stopper. He is not. He can do many things on the floor, but that is not his forte. You've gotten a chance to see Kobe up close and personal. I'm glad you actually brought him up. What do you think is his ultimate ceiling, and where does he kind of fit in with this group long term, or whatever it may be of this group long term?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what his ceiling is, but he looks like somebody who has a very good feel for offense overall. He's got a pretty good package of step backs. Like he's a lefty. So, I don't. I'll stop there before I get in trouble on that. But he's got a really nice perimeter game to go with a pick and roll game. So he's got an outside shot. He can run a pick and roll, and he can make all the reads in pick and roll. Like he can get it to the big man. He could take it himself. If the third guy is coming in and collapsing, he can make the right kick out read. One of the things that's particularly nice is that he's a pretty explosive athlete. So if we've seen a lot of Trae Young pick and rolls, and Kobe is not Trae in running a pick and roll offense, but it's always a little bit jarring to see him turn the corner to pick and roll. And if somebody's not there, he just keeps going and gets a layup. Like he's up at the rim, and it's like, oh, okay, that's something we're not used to. But he's kind of he's kind of like a big athletic point guard, and so you see some flashes of that athleticism, whether it's turning the corner in a pick and roll, but you also see it at times in things like when he's the help defender at the rim. It's not a lost cause. We've seen, I don't know, seen a lot of times this season where maybe it's DeJounte trying to help at the rim, and I think I would say that he's a little bit more vertical than DeJounte is. Like, get up a little bit higher and a little bit quicker, and he's willing to be a little bit more physical. And so it's quite a mix of tools. And I think something that I've seen more over the last 3-4 weeks is just more of the perimeter defense. Earlier on in the season, when he was playing for College Park, when he first got to College Park, when he got healthy after his wrist injury, was it a wrist injury? I think it was.
Oh, I believe it was
When he first got to College Park, they were just devastated by guard injuries. They had no guards, and so it was basically Kobe create 48 minutes of offense for us. And both he and Ryan, head coach Ryan Schmidt in College Park have said, once players got healthier and it got a little bit more normal, it's like, okay, hey, let's focus a little bit more on the defense. And I think what you've seen is that he can kind of just pick somebody up and stay in front of them, and that's encouraging to see.
That last part there is probably very critical for this team in particular. Is there a world where by the end of the season we're seeing Kobe log heavy minutes?
I don't know about heavy minutes, but I think it would be wise to get him in the rotation. I mean, if you've got a healthy Trae, a healthy DeJounte, and a healthy Bogdanovic, that's a lot of minutes right there. But that hasn't been all of the minutes. We've seen the Hawks work a whole bunch of other guards into the rotation, even when those three were healthy. So if you're not getting 36 minutes out of, did I do the math right now? 32 minutes out of each one of those guards, or if Bogey's playing some small forward or something, then I think it's right to try to get Kobe in the mix. I don't think we need to see what Patty Mills can do. I don't think we necessarily need to see what Garrison Matthews can do. Obviously, they add something very different, but I think it's uh it's a part of the season where it's time to build towards next season. That doesn't mean sell on this season. I think getting to a postseason series with Onyeka and Jalen, logging heavy minutes together, that would be a great thing for them. I don't think that you're trying to just tank and get the best pick in a lousy draft. Um, but I think it would show some foresight to play Kobe now.
Yeah, Quinn loves him some Garrison Matthews. We see a lot of
I
kids.
mean, they're doing very different things. Like, Kobe's more of an on the ball shooter. Garrison and in the first couple of games when he was with the Hawks, they had or the most recent games with the Hawks, they had Kobe basically playing small forward. It was just kind of stand in the corner, which wasn't really. I mean, he's fine with that, but it's not really his game. Garrison's more of a movement shooter, and Kobe just brings a whole lot more to doing stuff on the ball. And they're both interesting defenders. I think one of the things that Garrison does really well is like, and the Hawks need to do more overall, is like if somebody's moving a screen, make them pay, make the contact, make the referees call that moving screen. Garrison's great at that, and like you just want so much more of that from the other Hawks. But um, Kobe's going to be so much better at just saying, okay, if it's you and me, I'm going to stay in front of you. Like he can do that. Garrison.
From one player that we're hoping to see that kind of leap from to a player who has taken it, in Jalen Johnson. I've been high on him since before the Hawks even drafted him. When he fell to them at 20, I was beside myself, basically. What have you made from his leap this year? And is this something that you kind of always saw coming?
I think he had it all. I think there was only one thing missing, and that was a jump shot. And it hasn't helped that much. Like I haven't heard him talk about it. It's probably my fault. Maybe I should be asking this question, and I kind of want to at some point before we go, whatever ways at the end of the season. But the one thing that I think that he's just really added, in addition to just overall experience, is a jump shot. Like he's shooting so much better than he has before at any point. And you even just watching him in practice, like what does he do in a warm up now, taking jump shots compared to what he would do last year warming up a jump? Like it just looks night and day. It's such a much more polished product. I don't know what he went through to get to that point, but like everything else, I think he already kind of had in his bag. Now it's just reps, getting used to playing more defense, getting more reps defensively, and it's all stuff that was kind of there, but the jump shot kind of unlocks everything else offensively.
He's kind of a unique player in that I think he's gone from being viewed as a small forward to a forward. Now we know the game is largely positionless. It's more about how you play than where you play. But he's gone from being a small forward to power forward. Some people have viewed him as a small ball center. Where do you think his ultimate fit is when he finally develops into what he can be as a player?
Well, it's funny that you kind of went up in position, which is what they've done offensively. But the biggest difference from Nate to Quinn is they kind of downgraded him position wise, where he's not stuck guarding centers. Now it's like, hey, stay with this small forward. And so they've kind of downgraded him, until the recent spate of center injuries this week. But prior to that, just kind of looking at the season as a whole, he's guarded more on the perimeter, which he hadn't done. So I just think he's a wonderful talent, and he can play anywhere from the 3 to the 5 on offense and the 3 to the 5 on defense. It just what the situation requires, what the opponent's doing, what your health situation is, what you need at that moment. But he's sort of positionless, and I think the one thing that he really does that changes what the Hawks do positionally is that he's an elite defensive rebounder, and that changes things for Onyeka Okongwu. Like it's very hard to play Onyeka in certain lineups as a center in heavy volume. If he does, if he's playing with Garrison Matthews as a small forward and DeAndre Hunter as his power forward, it's like it's too hard to get rebounds that way. But when you've got Jalen next to Onyeka, you're fine. Like Onyeka is okay as a rebounder, but he's not going to rebound for an entire team. Whereas Onyeka and Jalen together, they can.
When Jalen was absent, his impact with not being on the floor was a big storyline. You mentioned him, DeAndre Hunter. I think he had a similar impact on this team with his absence, and I know he gets a lot of flack for not being what everybody wants him to be, which is that defensive stopper. First of all, I don't know how many of those guys exist in the NBA today. Just put that out there. At the same time, I don't know how many of those guys can also go out there and give you 25 points on a nightly basis like Hunter can when he's right. Where is Hunter's development in your eyes? Is this what you maybe? I don't want to say where you saw him going because I don't know if anybody ever really projects when you get, especially when you get that high. But like the number 4 overall pick, do you think that he's where he's supposed to be? Is there more to him that he just has not tapped into yet?
Man, he came into the NBA as an older player. He's not a super, he didn't come into the NBA at 19. He played a lot of college, spent a lot of years at University of Virginia. So I don't know that he's going to add a whole lot to his game at this point. I think one of the things that gets underestimated is what a great shooter he is. Like, he is a great shooter.
I think it's career high 42% this year from three, if I'm not
And
mistaken.
he's honestly, I think he's been a great shooter like his whole career. Like, he's just if you just watch him shoot, it's just beautiful. I think what happens for him is that just a lot of the other things that he's doing offensively at times are a struggle. I know that, when he first started, I don't know if you go back to the beginning of last season or the season before that, there was a focus on punishing mismatches, especially under Nate. Nate's always like, find the mismatch. And so if they had somebody big guarding Trae, then usually it was somebody small guarding Hunter. And the play was, okay, have Hunter drive it. And Hunter is a reasonably good driver, but he's not a great ball handler and he's not a great passer. He's very right hand dominant and he doesn't see everything passing wise. And again, with the right hand dominance, he wants to pass with his right hand. So, it's always a little bit choppy to put the ball in somebody's hands that much if they're not a great facilitator. I still think that's, if we talk about even at an older age, what can you add? I think that's something that he can still work on. Like, there were a couple of passes last month where it's like, wait, that was DeAndre Hunter? Like, really? So, I don't think it's a lost cause, but it's just something to constantly think about in terms of what you're expecting for him out of offense. Like, he's the best perimeter defender on the team. Like, it's been that way for many, many years now, and it's still true, and he's still better than Jalen Johnson. Like, just as I'm going to guard an offensive player who's elite, and I've got to do my job staying with him, like, DeAndre's the best on the Hawks, and it's not even a question. So, like, he's still super valuable when you can combine that with the fact that he can shoot and he can drive, but you just don't want him doing too much sort of processing where he's got to be the decision maker for the offense. You want Trae doing that, so you've got to figure out that balance of, how do you give DeAndre enough of that without diminishing the rest of your offense, because he really can be a great offensive player. He does a lot of things and he's a great shooter. And since he's been coming off the bench the last couple of weeks, he's looked absolutely terrific.
I want to ask you real quick about that. Do you think that this is something that stays this way for the rest of the season? This arrangement with him off the bench?
I don't know. Like, it's possible. Like, I mean, you could almost settle him on it. Like, I'm sure there's a pride thing where he probably wants to start again at some point, or where it's like, hey, you're doing just as much off the bench in fewer minutes than what you're doing as a starter. We're going to need you to finish games. You're staying healthy more than you were before. Like, maybe these are things that you can sell to him, where it's something that appeals to him, at least in the short term.
He's an interesting player to me because, like I said, he gets a really tough rap in the public court of public opinion. I think he's kind of taken John Collins' mantle in that regard, where no matter what he does, even though all the things that he does well, all they're going to focus on is stuff that he's not doing right now. My favorite tagline for Hunter is "A decisive Dre is an effective Dre." When he just goes, I think he's really, really good. It's when he starts to hesitate, and that's when I see a lot of stuff that you're actually talking about there. Before we go, I do want to wrap up and kind of ask you about your thoughts on the rest of the season, how this is all going to play out for the Hawks, because they're 24 and 31 coming out of the break. They got a lot of, I guess you could say, work to do, but I don't know how many changes you can expect down the stretch of the season. Just what do you think this group's, I'm not ceiling, because I've used that word a lot this podcast, but just where do you see them going towards the season's end?
I mean, it feels like they're a lock to be like a 10 seed and have the play-in in front of them. Like, it just seems way too hard for them to drop out of the play-in race, and yet at the same time, it's way too hard for them to get out of the play-in on the good side, or even to get like a 7-8 kind of thing. Like, those just seem like uphill battles. So the thing for until we get to the play-in, what am I looking for? It's I'm kind of fascinated to see what happens when Onyeka and Clint are both healthy again. Um, every time that Clint has been hurt in the past with Onyeka on the roster, it's always like, okay, Onyeka starts now. When Clint gets healthy, Clint's going to start again. I don't know that that's true. I don't even know who's going to be healthy first when these guys get healthy. But if they get healthy around the same time, um, I'm starting to think that maybe at some point you say, okay, you know what, Onyeka, you're going to be the starter because you're the guy who's going to be here next season, almost certainly. And we want you to play next to Jalen as much as possible. They just have a great chemistry. They're like, as much as they jab at each other, they're like best friends on the team, and just chemistry wise on and off the court, it's just terrific for those two. And so if you're going to start Jalen, it just makes sense to kind of start Onyeka with him and get those reps and have those two together as much as possible, in my opinion. I don't know that they'll do that, but that's something that I feel like for the first time, it feels like a real possibility and not just a shot in the dark. And it's interesting, I don't know what Clint's future long term with the Hawks is. If they feel like they're going to try to move him this summer, then I think that's another reason that you might see Onyeka as a starter. If the Hawks are indeed trying to stay out of the luxury tax, but also sign Sadiq, maybe come up with an extension for Jalen. I guess that wouldn't take effect right away, but if you're making money moves like signing Sadiq that add salary, and you're truly trying to avoid the luxury tax, you're not going to be able to do that without moving some salary off. And so if Sadiq stays and gets a long-term contract, then some other salary has to go away. And if it's not DeJounte, then it's probably Clint in my mind. So, again, what is the Onyeka Clint dynamic for the rest of the season? I think that's kind of a fascinating question going forward.
Last thing, what do you make of the not the Trae rumors themselves, but the disrespect, the perception of Trae around the league? When he does come up, it's not about stars coming to join him. He doesn't get that same respect that other stars get, despite the numbers, the performance. This is historic production we're talking about from a player who a lot of people didn't think could even make it into the league. So why is it that he's popular, right? He sells. Why is it that he struggles to garner the respect that I think he rightly deserves?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's a lot of things there. So is this a question about just sort of
Just his perception
what
around.
does Trae have to do to earn respect?
Yeah, he's like Rodney Dangerfield right now.
Or does this tie into the stuff about the trade rumors or no?
Well, a little bit, but just even not the trade rumors themselves. But why is it not even guys coming to play with him? Why is it that he has to go somewhere? Why does he not get the respect that, man, somebody wants to go play with
Yeah,
you?
I don't. Okay, I would kind of separate those two. I think the not coming to play with Trae is more of a Hawks thing than a Trae thing. The Hawks are not the Lakers. Like the Lakers have been a free agent destination for a very long time. There's other places, Miami, it's warm weather. They've got a pretty good tradition of winning. That's a place that's a free agent destination. The Hawks haven't been that. They should be. Like, I mean, you look at what an NBA, like if I think about what is it that an NBA player could want, like cost of living's reasonable, the city's great, the people are great. Like living in Atlanta, like I've lived a lot of places. I like Atlanta the best, right? Like it's not hard to see NBA players wanting to come play in what's a fairly warm weather city with a lot of culture, a lot of black culture. It's a black league. You would think that, hey, coming to Atlanta, that's a pretty good thing, but like it's never happened. It's part of it's just the culture of what they've had in terms of winning, what they've had in terms of ownership, what they've had in terms of what they're willing to spend. It hasn't been a buyer's market here in Atlanta. So, that was something that was interesting to watch when sort of Travis Schlenk and Trae were both new and together. It's like, can they make this a destination? And it didn't happen. Like, doesn't feel like a destination yet. And so I think that's more on the Hawks than it's on Trae. As far as the other part, Like, why doesn't Trae get respect? Like, what was it? Trae got like 1 vote as an All-Star reserve. That was just, it was just wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's weird because it's like, okay, that's his relationship with the players. As far as his relationship with like the media in terms of the media vote, like he could have been in as a starter if he won the media vote or had done reasonably well in the media vote. Like the fan vote plus a so-so media vote would have gotten him in as a starter. And he didn't get the media vote. And it's like, well, I kind of get that. Like, Trae's, what is this, his 5th season
6?
in the NBA? 6?
I think so.
6? Okay.
Double check.
So, like, the first 2 years of his career, he was a bad defender. And he's always going to be 6'1". And so those things, when people see them, they say, okay, he's not playing defense. If you say that in 2021, but let's go back a little bit more than that. If you say that in 2019, you're right. He is a bad defender. But this season, he has busted his ass on defense. Okay, how many times has he been on ESPN doing that? How many times has he been on ABC or TNT doing that? Nobody sees it. I try to write about it. I try to tweet about it. A lot of other people say, hey, you know what? Trae's playing defense this year. And they're right. But it doesn't sink in because people in the media who aren't Atlanta based, they're going to go on what they've seen from Trae in 2019 and 2021. And so, reputation earned and they're kind of hard to shed. Like Trae's a brilliant offensive player, and I think people see that. I think also like he's a better offensive player than what his numbers are. You look up his shooting percentage, okay, it's 43%, and you look up his 3-point percentage and it's 35%. But like, it's more than that. What he does on offense, like the number of lob passes. Like if you look at like the all-time field goal percentage career leaders, it's like John Collins, Clint Capella, and when Onyeka Okongwu has enough minutes, it's going to be Onyeka Okongwu. Like he is setting those guys up for the easiest baskets in their life, whether it's a pass, whether it's him driving for a floater, drawing in the defense, and all of a sudden they're getting a tip in behind him. Like he can run a historic offense, like off the charts. Like, if it's not this season, at some point he's going to run an offense that's like top 10 in league history efficiency wise. Like he can do that, but he's added stuff. He's more mature. He's a better defender. He's rounding it all out. And at the same time, it's kind of a lost opportunity for the Hawks that they aren't taking advantage of that. They're not spending. They're not winning. Like this it just feels like a loss. And so they're a little bit of a crossroads. And so when Trae says things like, Kobe and Dirk were lucky enough to win championships in the places where they were drafted, or I guess Kobe was not necessarily drafted, but he was in LA from his first game. Like Trae wants that too. Trae wants to win championships. And so I think at some point the franchise needs to sell itself to Trae and say, hey, here is what we can put around you, and let him know that plan. Because if they don't, he's going to see the same thing from Atlanta that the entire league does. They have to build that reputation. They don't have it now. And so it's incumbent on the Hawks to let Trae know, that they, one, appreciate how unique he is, and two, here's our plan to go get a championship that goes above and beyond, trading a whole pile of draft picks for DeJounte Murray. Like they need to do something more creative, more efficient, more conducive to winning than that. And so it's a big question going forward.
Winning has definitely been a prevalent theme in a lot of things that he has said in recent months and past couple of seasons. So I totally agree with you on that. Kevin, I want to thank you again so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me. This was a great conversation, as I expected it would be. Be sure to follow him on X at Kevin Chouinard, at KL Chouinard, Chouinard. Follow his work, NBA.com. Also, listen to the ATL and 29 podcast, and on game nights, check out the Hawks on Bally. I keep wanting to say Twitter. It's so natural for me to say Twitter, but the X
just doesn't have any action to it. So yeah,
it sounds kind of like I shouldn't be saying it. But again, like I said, follow his work. KL Chouinard. That's KLCHOUINARD. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me, Josh G Buck, on X at JOSHG Buck. Follow the show, Clocker Sports, or clockersports.com. Visit the website, clocksports.com. Follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 3zeros pod. That's the number 30 and pod. The email address is contact@clockersports.com. And of course, you can read all the stuff at Clocker Sports. Check out everything else. Heavy on sports, last word on sports, soaring down south. And of course, like I said, everything at clockersports.com. And until the very next time, you already know what it is. I'm gone.